Excuse me. Welcome to Cup with Havoc number 2. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of reflection, and this video is a reflection of things in my life that I find very, very important outside of manscaping. Nothing's more important than having a hairless chest for me. But anyway, alright, check it out. So, in class the other day, I was having a discussion with a very intelligent young lady in my sociology class. And I wanted to talk to y'all about some racism stuff, because we're doing this in class, racism and gender sexuality or whatever. So I figured I'd make a video about this just in case anybody from my sociology class has been reluctantly enough to find me here on YouTube. So let's begin with my name. First, my name is James Edward Williams Jr. My ethnicity is multicultural, that being Cherokee Indian, black, and white. Alright? Now, as the background noise is going to happen, so we're just going to keep going. As of the background noise, I just want to talk to y'all about a few things that you probably need to understand. I am not a racist by any means necessary. I do everything I can to not offend people. I don't like offending people. I try my best to keep that shit as real as possible and try not to hurt people's feelings. As of late, besides the political affiliation, the clusterfuck that it is today, that's still going on today, I did not vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter. If any of you feel like following any of these videos that I did about that, you can go ahead and watch that, because this isn't about that. This is about growing up multicultural and what a lot of people don't understand how this works. Alright, so as a child, when I first found out what racism was, I learned it from fellow black people. Alright? I'm going to try to keep this as PG-13 as possible. I'm going to try not to do any more swearing, and I'm going to try not to do any bad racial words. So I won't be using the N-word, the H-word, the C-word, the C-words for Asians, the J-word for Japanese, the K-word for Vietnam and Koreans, etc., etc. So, since I've been a victim of all those, and also the P word for white people from Native American perspective, I will be doing my best to not do that. Alright, so when I first learned about what racism really was, I learned it from black people the hard way, because I was a victim of reverse racism. And I learned that really early. I learned it by the time I got into second grade, I knew what a half-breed was. By the time I got into the third grade, I knew what you're not a real N, you're a half N, and that was from the black people. And from the white people, you're not a real H, you're a half H. And thank God for George Jefferson, because if you want to know what the H is, then you can go watch the Jeffersons and figure out the H word. Alright? Now, anything else, you can go find roots. You'll hear a lot of N words, and you hear a lot of C words, and a lot of what the hell was the other word? H words. Anyway, so, for my class, the young lady, we were all talking, and she's like, so, like, how's it work for you? It's like, alright, well, here's what happens when you're mixed, alright? I am not horrified when people come and ask me what I'm mixed with. That does not hurt my feelings. What hurts my feelings is when they're, like, right here and right there, and they're saying it loud enough so that I can hear it. And I've had this incident happen on one occasion where I've turned around and said, look, if you got something to ask me, just ask me. It's like, yeah, we didn't want to offend you. I said, okay, look, I'm not the only mixed person on earth, if you can believe that. I am not the only one of us in existence. And we are people. We exist. We just live differently from you, because when I go home, my mom is this color, and my dad is this color. My mom is this culture, my dad is this culture. The problem is, both my parents are mixed. Alright? So, both sides of the family never really explored their other side. My dad has a black father. They did everything black. They didn't do any Native American stuff. Grandma Ada did certain Native American stuff, but she didn't really enforce it into the family. Grandma Bay, the only Native American crap that she forced in the family was those goddamn corn and the pancake thing that I still don't like to this day. This is another reason why I just don't like corn. But on my mom's side, we did the same thing. We didn't explore the white side. We didn't explore the Native American side. We just explored the black side. So my grandfather on my mom's side looked like a white man with a tan. So when you see me and my 14-year-old nephew doing BJJ on one of these videos, my grandfather was like that. Actually, he was a little bit lighter than that. So he basically looked like a white man with a tan because one of his parents was white and one of his parents was black. Well, my grandmother, her being adopted, is in the air, but we know that she has Cherokee in her. Her nickname is Pocahontas. So whenever the president started talking about Pocahontas, I started getting a little bit angry because, one, that's not Elizabeth Warren's name, and two, she only has 1/16 of Native American blood, while we have a lot more. And once I get the DNA test done, I'll appropriate the proper video for that for y'all. But anyway, the point is she was adopted and raised by my grandmother, Sarah, who was all black. Alright? So it's a long CF story behind that no one's really giving us everything. So we'll have to do our own research. And I like to do this before my grandmother passes. Now, my dad's mom and my dad are both gone. My dad died 5 years ago. His mother died in 2008. And she was like pushing 90. And my great-grandmother, her mother, died back when Ghostbusters and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out. So she died back in 80-something or another. And when you're going through your family history, or when you're going through this stuff, you have to understand how this works. See, white people, if you're like white and Irish and Scottish, then you can relate because you'll have the two different white cultural things that will either collide. The same thing with whites who are Hispanic white but not Spanish Hispanic, if that makes sense. Because Spanish Hispanics are basically like Native Americans, where Spanish who are white or Hispanics who are white, they're basically Spanish from Spain. Alright? Understand why Spanish is such a powerful language. To give you a quick history lesson, Columbus was from Spain, and they conquered like Puerto Rico and all those things. Cortez was from Spain. He conquered the Native Americans in the South American region. So Amazons, Aztecs, Incans, Mayans. It's another tribe, and I can't remember them right now. But all the lower level Native American tribes that were down there, they're still Native Americans. They're just not American Native Americans because America doesn't count them as Native Americans. But they are biologically Native Americans, which means they all came over from Asia 20,000 years ago, and they just kept going south. Okay, but Cortez conquered everything from the south regions from Mexico down, which is why they all speak Spanish. And Mexicans, Incans, Aztecs, Mayans, Amazons, all their languages. The Amazons might still have their language, but Aztec, Incan, and Mayans, their language, if you can find someone who can actually teach it and translate it, you found the miracle in a jar of honey. Or you found that one mustard seed in a jar of honey, making it honey mustard. Anyway, I like that joke. Anyway, the rest of the Native Americans were pretty much conquered by the Europeans, which is why if you find anyone who can teach Cherokee, Seminole, Powhatan, Cheyenne, Apache, Sioux, Pueblo, Hopi, Ojibwe, there's a ton more that I could go through, but if you can find them in their native language that hasn't been completely ratified, liquidated, indoctrinated, etc., then you've also found the diamond in the rough. And the reason that is because kill the Indian, save the man was a thing. So, that being said, when people would be saying that right here, instead of just coming up to ask me, it was really kind of offensive to me because, I'm more offended that you would say it behind my back instead of just coming up and be like, hey, can I politely ask you, what are you mixed with? Now, as I got older, as I got into high school and knowing more about my culture, it was a whole different ball game. The gambit was different, but I still didn't fit in. Also, as far as representation, there were very few movies made that showed Native Americans in a positive light. Most of them showed Native Americans in a bad light, except maybe Last of the Mohicans. Thank you, Graham Greene. Thank you, Daniel Day-Lewis. But and Dances with Wolves. Thank you, Kevin Costner. But for the most part, also thanks Last of the Dogmen. A lot of movies that came out showed Native Americans in a very bad light. Black Robe showed Native Americans on that middle field. If y'all haven't seen Black Robe, you should probably check it out. It's a really good movie. Again, a person who was it's like part Chinese and white played the lead female Native American. I can't think of her name right now. She's a very beautiful woman. She played in Resident Evil also, the second one. She was the lady who was the Asian lady that got attacked in the grave, who almost made it to the end of the movie only to die. So yeah. And then she was the reporter. Yeah. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. I would love to work with her though. But anyway, she used to be on To Catch a Thief. That was a good show. Didn't last long in America, but anyway. See, as an actor, I know the actors that I want to work with. And then on Deadly Ground, Joan Chen, who's nowhere near Native American, but is of Asian ethnicity, they let her play a full Inuit woman. And Inuits are also Native Americans, so therefore, if you're Eskimo, you're a Native American. So, if Joan Chen can play that, then I can play someone who's half Chinese. Let's just make it fair. Anyway, that being said, I'm sorry, Joan Chen. Also, Vivian Wu, another one of my favorite Asian actresses who's Chinese, also played a Native American in Tales from the Crypt. They called her Little Drum Beater. So, again, Native Americans were not always played in a positive light. They were played as the bad guys, kidnapping white women, scalping white men, and technically scalping wasn't really a Native American thing. That was just some bullshit that somebody started. But anyway, I cussed again. I'm sorry. The point is, I don't really know how many other mixed people aren't okay with you asking us to our face versus you talking behind our back, because talking behind our back really freaking sucks. When someone goes, you see that guy right there? He's cool. He's mixed. But I don't know what he's mixed with. Instead of, hey buddy, can I talk to you? What's your name? Are you mixed? And what are you mixed with if you don't mind me asking? See, I've had this happen a frack ton in life, I've had this happen more times than I care to count. But I'm not angry about it. I'm just like frustrated at the concept of telling people, look, if you have to ask me, just ask me. There's no anger or animosity about it. But it's just the concept of it would be better for us both if we engage in a conversation versus me hearing it and having to turn around and be a little snooty. Because I have done that, I have been a little snooty at some time. I guess it depends on the day. And I was at the university one time when my hair wasn't long and when I didn't know about Royal Crown. So I had relaxed my hair just to see what it would look like because I have naturally curly hair. Now I put enough of this hair grease in there so that I never have to go through that stuff. And hair grease is not cheap. That's why my hair's all nice and slick now. It's naturally curly, so trust me when I tell you. Things are not really pleasant. Anyway, so as that goes, a young lady who was Asian, she asked me, she's older than me, but she asked me, she's like, what country are you from? And I was like, because I'd never ever been asked that before, ever. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, what country are you from? I don't even know how I was there. I think I was either getting a library book from Alderman. I was in Alderman, but I either was getting a library book or I was getting some tea. I know I had just got off from work or I was getting ready to go to work. I think I was getting tea. Let's just say I was in Alderman, because I don't want to completely misconstrue the story or the point. The point is that the young lady was from Asia. I don't know which Asian country she was from. But she's like, your skin tone is dark and your hair is straight. And I was like, yeah, I got a perm. It's like, yeah, but what country are you from? I said, I'm from America. I was born here. She's like, yeah, but you don't look like something. I was like, I'm mixed. I'm black. I'm Native American and I'm white. This is also, I was like 23, 22, somewhere in there. I was in my 20s. And I did not know Native Americans were biologically Asian. So, no. She's still steadily asking me what country I'm from. I was like, but I was born here in America. I'm from America. She's like, I'm trying to ask you what your ethnicity is. And I said, I just told you, I'm mixed. I'm part black, part Native American, I'm part white. And she's like, yeah, but what country are you from? And I was like, are we going to keep this up? Because, I got to go to work. I was like, look, I'm American. One of my grandfathers was white. One of my grandfathers was black. Both of my grandmothers are Native American. One might be half black and Native American, but one is full-blooded Native American. So we went through that for like about 5 minutes. And I was like, that's the first time someone's ever asked me what country I was from. So I'm trying to think, what the hell, But anyway, the girl was Chinese. And because I wound up asking her, because I got tired of her asking me. It's like, well, what country are you from? She's like, from China. I said, oh, okay. Nice to meet you. I wish I could remember her name, but I don't remember her name. She's very beautiful, by the way. And so we went on about our business. Hadn't seen her again. No, ever. But she was like the first one. And then another woman who was also Asian, who was not from China. I have no idea where she was from. It was a really short conversation. And she was just bizarre. She kept staring at me. And I wasn't at Alderman, but I was outside in the Alderman area. I think I was going to Clemens to talk to Bruce about some stuff. And kept talking. And she's like, I'm not trying to stare at you, but I'm really trying to figure out what you are. I was like, well, what does that mean exactly? She's like, I need to know what your ethnicity is. I said, oh, for a minute there, I thought you were trying to say, you were trying to figure out if I was a guy or a girl. I said, I'm definitely a guy. I'm 1,000% man, and I love my women. I don't give a damn. I love my Asian women specifically, but I love my women. Yeah, she's like, oh, so you're not gay? I was like, oh, hell no, definitely not gay. My ponytail was growing, I have a man bun right now. Second time in life. See that? Figured I'd try it out. What actually happened was I didn't feel like pulling it all the way through, and somebody was calling my name, so I had something to do. So, there, man bun. Anyway, so I explained to her that I was straight, and then I had to explain to her my ethnicity. And by this time, my ponytail was getting pretty long. It's about as long as it is right now. And so that's why she couldn't figure out also if I was gay or straight. So I was like, yeah, well, I'm definitely not gay. But she had a boyfriend, so that kind of ruined that. Which is also when the shit got awkward. And then she rolled out. So then I rolled out. I think after I got finished talking with Bruce, because we hadn't made my first movie yet. I hadn't turned 27. So I was like between 24 and 25 because I had been working at the Colonnade for a long time. And I was about to be at the end of my rope. I think I started the Colonnade at 22, 23, somewhere in there. So I was in my 20s. Let's just put it that way. And, the university was a different place at the time. It was like still racist-ish. Not as bad as when those guys came in with the tiki torches, but it was pretty bad. A young lady had got the N-word scratched all over her car, and all kinds of racial assaults were going on. It was just really bad. But I wasn't a student there. I was a student at Piedmont, which I am continuing a student at Piedmont. Which, again, I was making my acting stuff, taking acting classes there. Then I started trying to make videos, saying movies and stuff like that, because no degree in acting can ever guarantee your acting job. Maybe I should have took the long road. Well, the longer road, which probably would have got me there a little bit faster. But anyway, so as I've gone on through life, I've had other incidences. So I had to go pick my sister up from Burger King. I probably shouldn't give you guys my entire life story in one video, but I'm giving you small examples. I went to go pick my younger sister up at Burger King from the boss that I threatened at the other Burger King. He got a new job closer to my house, and he was looking at my younger sister, and he was doing this shit. Now, that was after I got in the building. Before I got in the building, I was talking to this white cat. I was just standing outside. I didn't know if I wanted to go in. I didn't know if the door was locked. And he was looking at me funny. And I mean, he gave me, it wasn't the side eye, but it was like that puzzled look, like he'd never seen someone like me before, and he's looking at me. And then I looked back at him. He looked away for a second because I was looking at him looking at me. And he didn't know I was looking at him looking at me because I was just outside chilling, leaning up against the wall because I didn't want to sit in the car. So I'm sitting there, I'm looking, and I glance at him, and he'd be glancing at me. He didn't even know I was glancing at him. I'm like, yeah, I quick glance and go back, and I'm looking at the car, and I'm thinking, damn, how much longer do I have before my sister gets out? By the time I started thinking that, dude swallowed the courage pills and said, hey man, are you some kind of Indian? And my response was, well, I'm actually mixed with Cherokee. It's like, yeah. He's like, I've been staring at you for about like 10 minutes. I said, I know. And he's like, I just didn't know how to approach you on that because we don't really see too many of your people around here. And I'm like, well, you don't see too many of my people around here because I'm not one of those people. I said, I don't have a feather headdress and Native American garb. I said, my great-grandmother on my dad's side was full-blooded Cherokee. Yeah, and my grandmother is Cherokee from my grandmother's side, of my father's side. And my mother's mom is part Native American or all Native American because she was adopted. We don't really know. But I thought it was kind of funny. And he thought it was kind of funny. He's like, I wanted to ask you as soon as I saw you, but I was scared. I was like, scared of what? He's like, I was scared you might kick me in the face. Or I was scared you might go on the warpath. So I said, dude, it ain't even like that at all. I said, look, I know about this much about my Native American culture outside of I can shoot a bow and arrow. I said, outside of that, you know what? I don't do any rain dances or any of that other shit that TV depicts. I say, I have not learned that because I wasn't taught that, so I don't know what to do. But I know it's not an issue for someone to ask me what I'm mixed with. It's really not an issue for me. It might be an issue on approaching. Now, approaching is very important because how someone approaches you could be the life of death or the kiss of death, depending on how they talk to you. Okay? Hopefully that'll make sense. At some point, at some time, you can't just be a dick all the time. No, I'm not 100% a dick. Might be 100% an asshole, but I'm not 100% a dick. But you know, there are things that, you know, some people are nervous about approaching people on this stuff. You know, I mean, when I was at Piedmont, the first time that it happened at Piedmont was my boy who taught me about Native Americans being Asian. Because everyone else, actually it was the second time, excuse me. The first time that it happened at Piedmont was Carmelita, who worked at the media center. And she was a sexy, sexy Filipino woman. In turn, she's married to a black man. And in turn, I mistaked her daughter, who was like 6 foot everything. I mistaked her for a Native American. So I didn't figure her to be mixed. I had a feeling that she was mixed, but I didn't want to say anything because sometimes, you know, your gut feelings can be off. I'm not going to say they're wrong, but they can be off a little bit. Mine was off a lot because she was mixed. I just thought she was full-on Native American. And finally, another Native American person around here. Yeah, totally wrong. She's completely Filipino. Her dad was black, though, and she was tall as hell. She was really tall. Anyway, so Carmelita had met me, and she asked me, how do I like living in America so far? And I was like, so far? It's like, woman, I've been here all my damn life. She's like, what? I said, yeah. She's like, you're not Filipino? I was like, no, ma'am. I said, I am part Native American, part black, and part white. I'm not Filipino. She's like, oh, well, you look kind of Filipino. Or you look Hawaiian. I said, yeah, I get that a lot, but I'm not. So, but I have been mistaken for Hawaiian way before I started going to college. It's a long story. But anyway, so my boy who taught me about Native American culture was Korean. He came up on me, and at this time, again, if you haven't caught up with some of the stories, and so at this time there were rumors about Asians beating up people who thought they knew karate, and was that was like a high rumor around Charlottesville that a lot of people weren't really aware of. If you weren't a martial artist, you weren't aware of this. As a martial artist, I was very much aware of this because when my boy showed up, I was working with my bow staff illegally on Piedmont grounds because there's no weapons allowed, but I guess a stick is a stick. So I was working with a bow staff that I carried in my car, and he popped up. I mean, he like magic. I didn't see him coming. I was just whirling that thing around. I was having a blast, man. And he popped up, and I was And it's like, look, I don't want any problems. I know about a bunch of Asian guys that are going around beating up people who think they know martial arts. And I say, I do know martial arts. I have this stick. I'm not afraid to use it. He's like, no, no, no. I don't know about those rumors. I just want to know what you are. It's like, oh, okay. What do you mean by that? He's like, what is your ethnicity? I said, oh, that's easy. I said, well, I'm part Native American, I'm part black, and I'm part white. He said, oh, okay. Because, from a distance, I thought you were like a Chinese dude. I was like, oh, that might have been the fact that I do Chinese Kung Fu and other various martial arts. He's like, yeah, but that's not what, when I saw you from the hill there, I thought I seen a Chinese dude doing martial arts. I was like, no, I'm definitely not Chinese. He said, it would be an honor to be Chinese, but I'm not Chinese. So, he's like, okay, how long you been studying? I said, oh, I've been doing martial arts since I was 7 years old, man. He's like, cool. He's like, Native Americans are Asian. And I got to laughing my ass off, and I said, no, we're not. We're from Atlantis. When Atlantis sunk, we swam to America. Because that was the bullshit that was in my head. It was nowhere near proven to be fact. What is actually fact is Native Americans came out of Asia through Siberia, crossed the land bridge, and splintered off. Alright? We basically all splintered off from Eskimos and went in different directions. That's pretty much before Eskimos were Eskimos. We all were one gigantic ass tribe of people. And as tribes came over and got into their things, and then they splintered the fuck off. That's pretty much how it should have been written, but that's not how we are told. But anyway, the bottom line is, we had an argument. We went to the library. He won the argument. So, having people approach me and ask me what my ethnicity is really not that big of a deal. How you approach me is probably the part that's intimidating or whatever. I have 15 minutes to go to work, as you heard my alarm go off. But, so I'm sitting there, and I've had this happen so many times in life, from kindergarten to college, that I am so used to people asking me what my ethnicity is, And unlike other people, I'm not here to contest it. I'm not going to be like the phony people that are like, if you're Asian, there's nothing wrong with being Asian. It's really not. And if you're not Asian, there's nothing wrong with not being Asian. There's really not. I'm just mixed. So I have no problem with anybody's ethnicity whatsoever. Maybe if you're a dick, maybe if you're an asshole, I may have a problem with that. Or if you have a fucked up ass moral compass, I may have a problem with that. But as far as like, there was a girl on Instagram who was outed for saying that she was Native American and black when she actually was neither. She was actually Filipino. And I was like, so what's wrong with being Filipino? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being Filipino. I'm going to tell you, the greatest shame I've ever had was not knowing about my Native American heritage. Now let me explain that for those who have no idea what that means. Alright, so when I first learned how to read, I was 3 years old. The first thing that I ever touched in my life that had words in it was a comic book. And that comic book was Jonah Hex from DC Comics. I do not recall Native Americans being in there in a good light. I do know at least one Native American may have helped him, so he was like Jonah Hex's Tonto, but I can't remember his name. But Jonah Hex was the star. He had a fucked up ass face, and I wanted to be Jonah Hex. I always wanted to be a cowboy, but that was also because I did not know that I had Native American in me at all. Didn't know it. All I knew was that we had black. That was it. I didn't know what mix was until I got to school. Alright? Once I got to school, that's when I found out what racism is. Before I got to school, we never had the word N, we never had the word H, or any of these other racial things in our house. Maybe like the Jeffersons and stuff like that, but when you're like 5, 6, 7, you don't remember half the TV shows you watched back then. I remember all the cartoons, but as for everything else, no, I don't remember that. But when I was 3, I learned how to read that comic. Because someone taught me how to read that comic, and I fell in love with that comic. And every time I seen Jonah Hex in the store, if Dad was with me, Dad had to buy me that comic. I wish I still had those comics. I do not have those comics. I have other Jonah Hex comics in the basement, but not the ones that I started with. And so then I discovered Spider-Man. And I was reading a comic book in Walker, I think. And from Spider-Man, I had my friend David. And David introduced me to the New Mutants and Spider-Man and the X-Men. And from then on, I was an X-Men fan for life. Until they started retconning and killing all my favorite heroes off. Especially the Asian ones. Anyway, and the Native American ones. So anyway, after that, I was like, alright, well, this is that. And then sometimes the X-Men comics would get you confused because they would be on a different planet or a different universe and you wouldn't even freaking know it unless you read the little tiny blue lines. Thank you, Stan Lee, for that. But anyway, there was no real Native American great representation in some of the books, And up until like the Super Friends came on, there were no real Native American heroes outside of Black Star, who may have been Native American or not. We're not really sure. And then when Brave Star came out, Brave Star was me all day long. Brave Star was a cowboy who was a Native American. Except for I'm still scared of horses. I got bit by a horse when I was a child. So whenever people have Native American stuff, or when they say things about Native Americans, I have some flashbacks. Alright, I'm going to have to make a second part of this when I get out of work. But I had some flashbacks. So, first flashback was the ass whoopings that I got for carving half the soap in the house into canoes that were not canoes. Thank you, Miss Conrad. God rest her soul. The second flashback I had was when someone would bring up horses. It's like, James, you like horses? Like, no. It's like, but you're part Native American. I said, let me break this down for you. I may be part Native American, but there are two things that Native Americans do that you won't get this guy to do. One, I'm not getting near no damn horse. And two, the only corn I eat is popcorn. Okay? I do not like corn. And I do not like horses. I was like, but you're part Native American. You're supposed to love maize and horses. I said, well, not all Native Americans had horses. I said, if anything, I was probably the descendant of a freaking scout because I can't carve a bar of soap either. Anyway, they're like, what does that mean? I was like, well, a long time ago in the 5th grade, Miss Conrad got me the beating of a lifetime because I carved up so many bars of soap in the house and not one of them damn things looked remotely close to a canoe or a boat. So yeah, not having good tools, that's always a bad thing. That being said, I lived and I learned my lesson. I lived and I learned my lesson. So, having that being said, you have to understand that when you are mixed, it's a whole different world than when you're not. Alright? Like if you're white and you're mixed, and the other person is white, so like I said, if you're Irish and Scottish, those don't mish too badly. No. Now, let's say if you're Irish and Native American, there'll be some serious culture clashing. Or if you're Scottish and Native American and your grandfather catches you and you're a male wearing a skirt, it's like, today I want to be Scottish. Is it Scottish? MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. The islands of Scotland. Yeah. If you're wearing a kilt and you're Scottish, and you're part Native American, and your Native American grandfather catches you in a kilt, he'll probably, flip his shit. Be like, why is my grandson wearing a skirt? It's a kilt, father-in-law. It is a kilt. It is not a skirt. It is a kilt. What is a kilt? I can just see that conversation going all kinds of crap. And I can see his daughter saying, Dad, my husband is Irish. Deal with it. That's also why our son, not Irish, Scottish. That is why our son has a kilt. He has 10 kilts. His father only wears kilts. His kilts, sometimes I wear them. No one knows. Anyway, I can see that conversation going south really funky for the grandfather that's Native American. I can see that happening. Now, if the situation is reversed, and the Native American son is wearing not a kilt, and it's kilt month or Irish or Scottish celebration, and the family's really strong on that, and he chooses to wear Native American moccasins and not the kilt, where he wears the kilt but the shoes he wears the moccasins. I can see the Irish or the Scottish grandfather looking at him like he's some kind of nutball saying, those are not Irish boots, those are not Scottish boots. What the hell is that? And why is there little stringy thingies hanging from his shoes? Dad, as I told you, my wife is Cherokee. Our son is wearing moccasins and a kilt. Now, we're going to go do that little Irish jig thing, or Scottish jig thing, and we're going to go do that. And my son's going to wear his damn moccasins. Besides that, his mom won't let him leave the house without them. We have an extra pair of shoes in the car. She just doesn't know that. There'll be some culture clashing, where if both parents are white, so one's white, Irish, and one is Italian, they're going to have some Sicilian garth and Irish clashing, but the kid's going to figure it out, it's just like in our family, it was just basically easy for everybody just to do black on both sides, because that way there's no conflict. But also, if you're not taught your culture, there's no conflict. And if there's no conflict, there's no knowledge. All right? And yes, I said that. Sometimes conflict does bring knowledge. Because when I was a child, before my grandma Ada died, whenever my aunts and uncles on my dad's side said when they were kids, whenever they got in trouble, they referred to her as the old Indian woman. Instead of Grandma or Nana Ada, it was, oh, damn, we got in trouble. Here come the old Indian woman. Not, here comes old Grandma. They literally just called her the old Indian woman. Where I never called her that. I just called her Grandma Ada. And she died when I was between 6 and 12. My dad's mom died when I was in my 30s. Where her mom died when I was like barely in the 2 digits. So when that was going on, I spent time with her. Not all the other grandchildren spent time with her. They did. I only got her in the summertime until she died. And so she did do certain Native American stories with me about her and her brother John running through the woods in the moccasins, etc., etc. But she never really told us how reservation life was, etc., etc. And that was just something that I had to deal with, And it wasn't until my bro, who taught me about Native Americans being Asian, that it even dawned on me that my grandmother didn't look like the rest of us. And her mother before her, Ada, didn't look like the rest of us. And how my true colors up here, which also, as my Aunt Ruth had explained, she said, what the fuck? Sorry, I'm on Days of Our Lives. She said, that Grandma Ada didn't like the kids that looked more black versus the kids that looked more Native American. So that's how that worked. Anyway, stay tuned for part 2. This is Kung Fu Havoc number 2, BCNU, and I gotta go to work. Thanks, guys.